Paul from Luxembourg, member of the Luxembourg American Cultural Society and intern at the Luxembourg American Cultural Center in 2011. And I'm here today with Rosch and Heng Krieps in Luxembourg City. And we will have a little talk about their film from the 1960s. And let's talk a little bit about your personal history for everyone. And where were you born, Rosch?
Well, we were both born in Luxembourg, Heng in the town of Wils in the north of our country, and she was born in 1929. She's now 84, and I was born in the south of our country in Bettenburg in 1926. I'm 87 now. We met at a youth hosteling tour in 1948. We became comrades in the same hostlers group, and we were married 5 years later in 1953. We recently celebrated our diamond wedding, meaning 60 years together as a pair. We live in a very high apartment house. It makes you dizzy when you look up the whole building, but inside it is quite cozy, with our old family portraits hanging on the living room wall.
Rosch, how many children do you have?
Well, we have 3 children, 3 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren.
Yes. How many boys and girls are there?
Oh, there I'm never asked. How many boys and girls?
We have 2 girls and 1 boy, and the grandchildren are 3 boys and 1 girl. And great-grandchildren are 3 boys.
We Krieps is a very international and even intercultural family. Our people come from 5 nations: Luxembourg, of course, Belgium, Holland, Morocco and Cameroon.
So, what were your careers in life?
Well, I was 28 years in journalism. I worked for the weekly newspaper Luxembourger Land, and which is still published today. And I also wrote a small number of books, all in German language. The first one is now 50 years old. It was Luxembourgers in America. It was published in 1963.
When did your last book appear?
Oh, the very last one is
6 weeks. 6 weeks ago.
6 weeks or 8 weeks ago. It's a very new one. It's a book about walking and hiking and running also.
When was the first time you visited the United States?
My first visit was in 1950 and 51. By a great chance, I had received a free flight in a propeller plane, of course, at that time, from Luxembourg to New York. The air trip with refueling stops in Ireland, Iceland and Canada lasted almost 24 hours. In the USA, I was studying the American youth hostels movement, and I hitchhiked from coast to coast. It was quite an adventure. I literally stumbled in my French guidebook, which I still have here, over the village and especially the old Luxembourgish gravestones of St. Donatus, Iowa. And that triggered my interest into the history of the immigration from our country to the USA. And in the guidebook I have this sketch of my tour of 1951 that lasted about 8 months.
Good. So, Rosch, were you traveling all alone on the first time?
Yes, that first trip I was all alone. I was the only one who had received this free air trip. And from there on, from New York on, I went all alone. I had met many Americans before in a youth hostel center in Hollandfels, and I visited those people along the way. And there were so many that they practically reached me from one to the next one. And it was quite an adventure.
What were your impressions of America at that time?
Well, I found, of course, coming from a very small country, I found that America was a great big country and a strong country. The Americans also, I found, were a great nation. And there was at that time a very tragic difference that struck me between rich and poor.
So when did you go on your second trip to the United States?
The second tour was in 1962. We had planned this tour a long time ahead because I wanted to show my wife what America was like. And there was a certain dream in our mind about moving away to America with our children, letting them grow up in that free country over there. And Heng was most impressed, I believe, by the very high official persons we met.
Yes,
And then also, I remember you told me that you never forgot the great big redwood trees in California.
and also to meet Mrs. Roosevelt. We had
Yes.
lunch with Mrs.
Yeah.
Roosevelt, and
Yes.
That was quite an official trip to the United States, and it also had a name.
There was an official part of it, and we named that the Luxembourg Millennium Mission to America because the 1000th anniversary of the foundation of the city of Luxembourg was coming up in 1963. And the object was to invite the immigrants and the descendants of the immigrants to come and assist to the festivities of this millennium. So we called it the Luxembourg Millennium Mission to America, and I had suggested to Luxembourg's Minister of Tourism, Paul Elvinger, that we should visit the Luxembourg immigrants and their descendants in their settlements in the United States and invite them to assist to the festivities of this 1000 festivities of the city of Luxembourg.
Who did organize this trip?
We organized it ourselves. At the same time, it was also a private organization because I gathered first-hand information for the book Luxembourger in America, while our friend John Kiefer took scenes for the Luxembourgish spoken film Luxembourger in America.
How did your book and documentary film Luxembourger in America come to be?
first of all, we gathered addresses from people living over there, and so we know exactly nearly where we could go and organize our whole trip.
How long did this trip last?
It lasted 2 months. It was a very adventurous trip. And
who was traveling with you on this trip?
well, we were 4 people altogether. We were 4 friends. Well, the most important people, the most important man who was on our group was Minister Paul Alvinger himself. He met us in Chicago and in Port Washington, Wisconsin. He was the one who presented our group to the Luxembourg organizations over there. Then Jean Kiefer was both our movie operator and the cameraman for the film Luxembourgers in America. And his wife, Marie-Louise Lul Kiefer-Breden, cared for our food, our lodging and laundry. And Henrietta Heng, my good wife, she was our driver and our photographer. And I was the one who directed the mission and research for the book and the film.
So, Heng, you were driving across the United States.
Yes, certainly. We had a small Volkswagen, and we had inside, we put an office, we had a box, and that was our office. It was also possible for two people to sleep. Mm-hmm. So there were always two drivers and two people that were on rest or working behind on the office.
So you were driving over the nights?
Oh yeah.
Overnight, yes, yes. Mostly overnight.
Mostly overnight, yeah. So was this trip successful?
Oh yes, it was very successful in a way. We had made 39 film sessions for the immigrants and their descendants, and the result was that 1 year later, in 1963, two charter planes, propeller planes of course, with some 150 guests arrived from Chicago to at the Luxembourg airport, and many other people came individually. All attended the Millennium festivities and were greeted by the Minister of Tourism, by the Bishop of Luxembourg, by many mayors, officials, and by the press, by Radio Luxembourg and the Luxembourg television. And they took part in the whole festivities.
Besides meeting with many local Americans of Luxembourg descent, who were some of the most noteworthy people you met during this trip?
The most important person we met was the former First Lady, Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt. We were actually visiting her because we thought that the very, very first immigrant from Luxembourg was Delannoy from Clairvaux, and that proved to be wrong, but it was a very nice legend. And she received us very well. We were invited to lunch with her and her family. It was quite impressive, I must say. And then we met Governor Hughes of New Jersey, because New Jersey was celebrating the 300th anniversary of the foundation of the state of New Jersey. And then we met Ambassador Rosch Krieps in Washington, D.C., the Luxembourg consul in Chicago, Consul Trevelier, and then Major Emil Krieps, my cousin, who later became Luxembourg's Minister of Defense. And I also first met in 1963 the famous photographer Edward J. Steichen in New York. He told me of the affront our Luxembourg officials had received him with 10 years before. He still was very, very angry. And this is how I came to know him and to start my long series of articles about this distinguished, totally self-made artist of world renown. He was the most important and successful of the Luxembourg migrants to America. He had come as a poor farmer's boy to America, and he became all by himself one of the world's leading photographers.